Myanmar, formerly Burma, a country that is gradually opening up to the world, through tourism, economically and politically, after several decades of close isolationism, is undoubtedly one of Southeast Asia's most interesting countries. It is the second largest country of the region, located between China, India, Laos, Thailand and Bangladesh, on the shores of the Andaman Sea and the Bay of Bengal. The plain of the mighty Irrawaddy River and its vast delta are surrounded by an arcing mountain range. It is a mainly agricultural country, but also rich in oil and gas deposits, and famous for its rubies, sapphire and jade. The history of the beginnings of the First Burmese Empire date back to the 9th century. Burma's geographical location, away from trade routes, compounded Burma's isolation from the rest of the world, except when engaged in a conflict with one of its neighbours. In the 19th century, however, Burma was conquered by the British and incorporated into its Indian colonial empire. An independence movement began to develop in the 1930s, which after World War II and the Japanese occupation led to Burma achieving independence in 1948. A major role was played by a young general with an acute political sense, Aung San, who was however mysteriously murdered on the eve of independence in the government building. A political vacuum and the growing strength of the military led to a coup in 1962 that ended with a seizure of power by General Ne Win. That event hailed the beginning of military rule that lasted for over 50 years and ranks Burma as a country that has endured the longest stretch of government by a military junta of any in the world. The takeover of state institutions, the brutality meted out towards its own people, especially against minorities, and fatal economic mismanagement has led Burma to the brink of the abyss, where today 3/4 of the population live below the poverty line. In 1987, the UN added the country to its least developed countries list, where it remains to this day. Social impoverishment and soaring food prices led to an outbreak of protests in 1988 that were violently suppressed by the army. About 2,000 people were shot, including many students. Aung San Suu Kyi, daughter of Aung San, who returned to the country and stood at the head of the opposition, was placed under house arrest, where she was detained for 15 years. Successive protests were violently repressed over the years, most notably that in 2007, the so-called Saffron Revolution, named after the color of the robes of the Buddhist monks who attended en masse. The army stifled this outcry for freedom with brute force, shocking the world with the violence meted out to the monks, which in Burmese culture is considered one of the worst kinds of crime. The combination of internal strife, humanitarian disasters and international condemnation brought about change only in 2010, with the first general election in 20 years. Hailed by the military as a step in the transition from military rule to civilian democracy, opposition groups declared the election fraudulent and invalid, citing that in any case a 2008 constitutional amendment had already entrenched the primacy of the military. A nominally civilian government led by former General Tien Shen was installed in March 2011. The generals replaced uniforms with suits, and the so-called Burmese thaw began. Among the over 50 million inhabitants of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar, ethnic Burmese account for 68% of the population, with the remainder divided among 8 major national ethnic races, which comprise 135 distinct ethnic groups. Since independence, however, the central government has tried to merge the non-Burmese lands, abandoning Aung San's policy of unity and diversity in favor of Burmanizing ethnic minorities, which has inevitably led to outbreaks of ethnic conflicts. The Burmese Civil War, which has on and off lasted since 1948, ranks as the longest armed conflict in the world. The toll of these struggles are hundreds of thousands of dead, millions deprived of land and homes, and an economy in ruin. In 2011, the conflict flared anew, with the Kachin group demanding the establishment of a federation of states for Burma's ethnic minorities. As a result, thousands have been forced to flee their homes, and it is estimated that refugee camps today house more than 70,000 people, with some there for more than 4 years. Burma is a country with a Buddhist majority. More than 90% of the population confess to being Theravada Buddhists. Golden Buddhist temple domes glitter in the sun throughout most of the country, whilst the sight of monks and nuns traversing towns and villages in the morning light with their begging bowls is one of Burma's most emblematic images. The vast majority of monks are tolerant of other religions, though the growing influence of nationalist movements stands behind the ethnic cleansing of the Muslim minority, condemning them to the position of stateless persons, or forcing them into refugee camps, or to flee in overcrowded boats. The Catholic Church makes up 1% of the country's total population. Its followers are majority ethnic minorities with an animist past: Karens, Kachins, and Chins. According to Archbishop Charles Bo, the first cardinal in Burma's history, Catholics do not experience direct persecution in Burma.
We had all the privileges to run our own seminaries, our own novitiates, and also for like the ordinations of priests and appointments of bishops from Rome, and also even conversion those days. They had no objection, no difficulties at all. Only thing that we have been constantly followed by the military intelligence. We did not really enjoy equal privilege with the majority of the Buddhists. It's more like our building of the church and our constructions. Officially, we are never allowed to have to build new churches.
As Myanmar opens up to the world, some observers believe one step forward equates to taking 2 steps back. Since 2011, Myanmar has freed some political prisoners, legalized and acknowledged the existence of the opposition National League for Democracy, NLD party, letting it take its place in parliament, has invited Western investment and intends to move towards democratic elections. However, Aung San Suu Kyi, Nobel Peace Prize winner, head of the NLD and the personification of hope for change shared by many Burmese, has not been allowed to stand in presidential elections. The authorities continue to use force against student protests, whilst smouldering ethnic minority conflicts continue to erupt. According to Cardinal Bo, the people of Burma, above all, crave freedom.
I must say, the socialist regime came in when I was just 11, 12 years old. From that time, the whole nation was reigned with fear there, with the military regime and all. So fear in the political places, fear in the business, even in the schools, afraid of the teachers, afraid of the leaders, and also affecting the religion. My biggest dream, personally and as well as for the whole nation, is freedom.